Hello and welcome back to the AI Micro Skills Podcast. Today, I'm going to give you a look over my shoulder and show you what I'm working on as far as building custom GPTs. Now, this will probably even be a lesson in a series of like how to up your game in AI, kind of a series. But I wanted to do it now, even before the precursors that would lead up to this, like prompt engineering and automation and how to leverage your SaaS apps and all these other lesson ideas I have. But I wanted to jump into this one because I'm actively working on it now and I'm excited about it. So I had to jump in and just quick podcast / video to show you what I'm up to. Now, I will say this podcast, if you're listening to this and not seeing it, this is a video podcast. And this one's going to be a little bit more visually intense. Luckily, if you're on Apple Podcasts, which I hope, which is my favorite place to listen to podcasts, there actually is a video. You can watch the video right in Apple Podcasts. If you're not, then go over to Apple or to YouTube where you can watch this. And because I'm going to be sharing my screen and showing you exactly what I'm looking at in my own ChatGPT and what I'm using it. I have a bunch of little small applications that I've made, some that I've released publicly, some that I'm just using for myself, some simple ones, some ones that are kind of a work in progress. And I'm going to show you what I'm working on because I honestly, I just find that I love looking over people's shoulders and see what they're working on. So I thought you might too. So let's dive in with sharing my screen here. So right now I just logged in and I'm opening up. I'm looking at the normal ChatGPT. This is what you see when you hit ChatGPT, right? And I am on a paid version of it. So I started paying for this back in October, and the paid subscription, they actually closed it down because so many people were signing up for it. You can now pay for it again. I think it costs $20 a month. Well worth it. I'm now saving so much time with it that it's well worth it for me. I think if you start building custom GPTs like this, it'll be worth it for you too. So consider it. But let's dive into it. You notice this area has opened up. I have all these little like GPTs on the left-hand side of this. It's like, and you can see all the different names from, I have a little CoPilot, HOA Helper, Dan's Writer, Closed Mode Newsletter Builder, SEO Article Planner. I have all these little GPTs here because I've built them, and some of them are a work in progress and some of them are finished. Like I've talked a bunch on LinkedIn about this one called NameFrame, which is this custom GPT that comes up with a name for your podcast, your product, your company. Like it'll come up with a name for a bunch of different things. So that's one of my GPTs. I have a couple different versions of it. One that fits with a different GPT I made called SoundPlan, which builds a podcast strategy for you. And these all do different things. What I love about these custom GPTs is they can be really dialed in to achieve very small things, but that take you a ton of time. And that's where I think that's where these are the most helpful. Yes, you can do a lot of these things with the normal Chat GPT, but it's in customizing them to fulfill niche outputs that they're the most powerful. There's a lot of people out there building general custom GPTs that are like a podcast producer and it does everything you'd ever want it to do for a podcast. But I find if you actually base it on a step-by-step process, it gets much stronger. So let's take a look at some of these. I'm just going to go down the list. In no particular order, just the way that it's already organized here. Personal brand builder. I'm actually building a whole course in a GPT. In fact, let's go ahead and open it up and see what I got going so far. I've actually only just started this. I'm only on like step 1, but what I've even started playing with is making sure I can actually link to videos in the chat because it can build a whole process. I like to start my GPTs off with just the click here to start process. Boom. And then it knows, like, I almost start all of them. When someone says, click here to start the process, which the button says, do this. Hey, I'd love to help you with your personal brand. First, what's your name? I'm just going to say Dan. Try to make it more personable. Oh, something went wrong. That happens with GPT sometimes. They crash, but luckily there's always this reload button. Great. Let's start with this session with an overview of the process. Watch this quick video from Dan Sanchez, and then it has a video to a Loom video that I recorded. Now, this video, you can see it links, is to a video about something totally different. This isn't the actual video. What I was doing in this very beginning stage is testing whether I can put a link in here that goes somewhere else. That way I can host the video somewhere else and have them in there for context. Though what I plan on doing with this GPT after they watch the video and they say they're done watching it, then it'll prompt them with the next step. Be like, great, since you're building a personal brand, let's start to talk about the market that you're targeting, right? Because good marketing has to pick a market and pick a niche in order to focus on to build a good personal brand. Who are you building a personal brand for? So it starts asking questions about the market and the target audience and starts learning these things. It needs to know these things because they become important later on when you're starting to build your messaging and the things that make you weird, my opinion of what makes a good brand. So I'll be walking through this. That way, when people leave this course, because the chat GPT is pulling all the goods out of them, because people do well reacting to questions rather than being given a blank sheet, even a template, is it's going to draft your personal brand for you. It's going to build a personal brand doc with recommendations and suggestions for visuals and what you should be doing and how you should be using your social media, and give you much better ideas because it's gotten the information out of you. And because you've watched the videos, you knew what it's doing and how it's doing it in order to make those recommendations. So not only do you learn in the process, but it actually gives you some tangible asset that you can walk away with, almost as if you had a real coach to work with. So that's what I'm excited about with this GPT, but this is up and coming. This is my project that I'm currently working on. CoPilot. Man, I actually probably don't leverage this CoPilot enough. I just put a little face in there of someone older than me because I feel like when I'm talking to a co-pilot, I'd like to talk to a mentor that's been through the works. You are an expert business mentor and life coach helping Dan Sanchez reach his goals and faster by asking critical questions, providing clear and actionable advice. Please reference the knowledge of Dan. Right now, I've essentially thrown a lot of things about myself, my resume, current life, values, my bucket list, my strength finders. And instead of just uploading these documents here and there, I tried to get it to be a personal coach that would proactively ask me questions and troubleshoot things, but it was a little bit ambitious. So I've backed it off. And right now I just know it has these things about me. So I'm like, hey, considering my life focus, reference the life focus document that you already have. How would you consider this, I don't know, opportunity for my career? And then it would pull through my life focus and all the different objectives I have for my life and be able to reference those to remind me like, well, you should consider this. And it would line up with this, but it'd be detrimental to this, so this is a co-pilot. A lot of people are building co-pilots in order to help them make business decisions, because you can upload your business docs, your P&Ls, your balance and asset sheets. You can you can use it to help you make decisions based on real information. You can upload that here. And while you can upload that to a normal ChatGPT window and have it analyze it there, some of these things are static and they don't change. My Strength Finders profile, where all 34 of my strengths are listed in order, doesn't change much. So I could just have it up there and I know it's there, and I can ask it to reference it. So that's the fun thing about a co-pilot, is you can let it learn a lot about yourself. Shoot, I even have a list of all my LinkedIn posts in here to learn about me. I haven't used this one quite enough, and I need to figure out what things I should be having it helping me think through more. But that is a great use case. HOA Helper. I'm the secretary on the board of my little neighborhood HOA. And if you've ever been on an HOA, there is these documents called the HOA Charter and the HOA CCRs, right? It's almost like the constitution for your little HOA. And honestly, it's all in legalese, and it's a really long document. And honestly, sometimes I'm just like, I essentially use this ChatGPT to be like, hey, in the CCRs, do we ever address X? And it's much smoother than a search function because it can actually think about what's said in those. And it has the instructions like, you are an expert lawyer who specializes in HOA and helps me find and interpret different topics with my HOA charter and CCRs. So all it does is it doesn't give me legal advice. It just helps me find and reference things that I want to know about in the CCRs and how to actually interpret it, which is really helpful. It's a little tool I need when I'm evaluating different things that say there and how to interpret them and look at them. It just speeds up the process. I could have done it manually, but it's much easier to have AI go find them and tell me what's in there and what I should be considering. Dan's Writer. This is my little personal writer. This is a great thing. You can actually download all your LinkedIn posts. So if you've been posting to LinkedIn or anywhere, if you got a blog, something where you've been writing, you can extract it all to like some kind of file. I pulled it, like LinkedIn will literally give you a CSV of all your posts. You can just Google how to extract information from LinkedIn or my profile. One of them will be your LinkedIn post, upload it as a spreadsheet, and then write something like, and I'll probably make a whole course on how to do this, or a blog post that shows you what mine is, so you could do the same thing. Like, you are Dan's personal writer. Use the following guidelines as Dan. Dan's writing style, and then it breaks down my full writing style. The funny thing is, I didn't even write this writing style. I don't even know how to write a writing style. I'm not a writer. I'm a marketer, and I do know how to write for social, but I don't know how to even evaluate my own tone and voice. So what I did was I uploaded this LinkedIn post sheet first, and I said, hey, scan this, and as a professional writer, evaluate my writing style in such a way that you'd be able to use it to draft documents that are that are in my voice and tone and as me. And then it wrote up like the GPT wrote up this whole writing style, and I just pasted it in here and used this for instructions to guide it. And I still have the LinkedIn posts in here that it can reference. And now this writer, every time I'm having it write something as me or for me, I use Dan's writer GPT because it's trained on who I am and how I speak. Now, is it perfect? Nah. But it's way closer than if I was just using the normal GPT, and now I don't have to retrain it on all my stuff every time. This GPT already knows it and is just preloaded in there. So now when I ask it to write as me, I don't have to explain what that. It already knows it because it's detailed and documented here. Everyone should really have a personal writer in here. Closed mode newsletter. This is one that's still work in progress. I'm not going to share it because it's not mine. I'm using it for a client, Close Strong, but I've essentially automated a lot of the newsletter process by giving a few different inputs of a podcast transcript, a few different tools that I found recently, and a few other pieces of information. Then it takes that and then walks through a very specific process and way of breaking it down into certain segments of the newsletter that I then copy and paste over into a HubSpot template. So saves a ton of time because I'm not actually writing the newsletter. The newsletter is written a similar way every time. And of course, I have to spot check it and edit it, make sure it didn't go off the rails from the content I gave it, but it saves a lot of time. I need to make one of these for myself. I haven't made one yet. SEO Article Planner. This is one that I want to release publicly, but I just haven't taken the time to like put the finishing touches on it, but it's really good. I'd love to break this down in full, but essentially does analysis on the keyword that you want to do. And this GPT is so good at doing is it can go and search because it has access to Bing, and I wish it were Google, but at least has access to Bing to go and do the search, find the top ranking articles, find out essentially what are the common things these articles are all hitting on. And then it can do analysis based on the articles it's reading, based on the key term. What is the actual intent? It can actually decide what the intent of the search phrase is, which if you're doing SEO, you know is everything. Like if I can figure out what the intent is for a keyword, that's like half the battle, is just figuring out what are they thinking? What's in their head? What are they looking for? And then how do I deliver that? So this GPT does the searches, does the competitive analysis, and then it does an analysis on the intent behind the keyword, and then comes up with a unique angle that hasn't been covered yet in the top 5 ranking articles, and then gives you some options to pick from that hit on the intent better than what's currently ranking. And I probably need to modify it a little bit because what's currently ranking probably has some things that need to come into it rather than it be all unique. So it needs to do a better job of that. And that's why I haven't released it. I'm still kind of refining the prompts to get what I need out of it. But it's really cool because a lot of good SEO work is in the planning, not in the writing, right? If you can plan for it and create a good outline, then the writers can run so much faster, especially if they can they know what to go get from the subject matter experts who have the knowledge to answer it. So that's the SEO Article Planner to be released someday, probably within the next couple of weeks. I'm still working on that one. Name frame. Oh my gosh. This is actually a modified version of name frame. I'm just going to skip to SoundPlan. SoundPlan, let me open this one up and go to Edit GPT, go to the Configure tab, and you can see here that there's a lot of instructions, and I usually, to kind of give you, let me open them up. Let me label them. And I oftentimes build a GPT by thinking through almost like what's called a chain prompt. Any chain prompt would make a fantastic GPT. So if you've had some saved posts from LinkedIn that had some chain prompts, as in like first prompt it with this, then this, then this, all of those make for fantastic GPTs. They're actually better as custom GPTs, I promise. Because chain prompts, you have to like copy and paste it in there, and it's kind of a pain. But you can just put it all in one prompt or one set of instructions that then walks you through it. I always start off my custom GPTs with like, you are like defining who it is and the main objective it's trying to achieve. So like this one, you are an expert B2B podcast showrunner and marketer in charge of developing podcast shows that attract B2B an audience of B2B buyers and retain their attention. You will help others develop a unique premise for their show by walking them through the following steps. Step 1, when prompted with, click to start the strategy session, reply with, and then I give it a very specific phrase to go back with. What topic would you like to cover on your show, and who will your audience be? It's amazing. You could just tell it exactly what to say when you want to say it. It's like programming it, except you could just write it out step by step. If you're looking at the video now, you could see like how simple this is. Like read it. Like step 2, once they respond with the topic and audience, search Bing with top Bing podcasts on. I put like this little codey topic. This like mimics code, but it actually like this like insert topic, because they gave the topic before and the audience, you could almost use this little code. I know it's hard to understand like how funny this is, because a coder will know like, well, none of these instructions are code, so why are you using code in it? But marketers and developers know like this is generally where you insert it, but it's intuitive enough to know that it wants to take, like, I'm being instructed to take the topic that was given to me and the audience was given to me and put it into this search to search Bing with, right? And you can do that in here. It like remembers these things. It's usually you'd have to call it from a database, but here you could just tell it to remember the topic that was given to you, and it just intuitively shoots it in there. I love it. And then I ask it to read through the top 5 articles that come up, then do some careful analysis on what the angles are exhausted in in the podcast niche. List out the top 15 most common angles. Then ask if any other common angle should be added to the user running through this GPT, because they might know something that's not in the articles. So you can see there's lots of different steps here, but I make it really simple. Step 1, space, dash, space, and then I give it the instructions of like, when the user gives you this, then do this, and then finish with this. It's kind of like this 3 points with most of my steps. When the name is given, prepare this, then repeat this, or have them select from this option here, or tell them to pick here, or ask them to have you just go on if you should move on to the next step, because some of these tasks are so big that you have to break them up. But they're not complicated. They just take time to think through, what do you want to have happen step by step. And this was something that we worked a lot on at Sweetfish when we were building podcast strategies. And I just thought through, like, what does that take to build step by step, and what can the GPT actually do in there? Obviously, to build a good podcast strategy, you'd probably want to have some conversations with the audience. But since the AI can't have the conversations for you, what it can do is some research on the internet, which isn't the best, but it's not a bad place to start, considering most podcasts don't even have a strategy doc at all. So it actually does good research on the internet and actually can do some fairly good analysis. So it gets people farther along. Of course, it's not as good as a pro that does nothing but this and does the proper research and analysis, but most people aren't paying for that. So like, just use this and you'll get farther along with your podcast. So that is the SoundPlan, which you can get if you subscribe to my newsletter. The next one is My Showrunner, which is the one I've put the most time into. I co-developed this one with Susan Diaz. She's the one who gave me the idea about this. And then I went over the weekend and put it together. But this is one of the ones I'm using most often now, and I'm saving the most time with, because it just took a simple process of preparing for guests coming onto the show, and it actually does research on the guest, then finds out angles based on your show's premise, based on the expertise of the guest, and finds interesting angles. You pick an angle, it writes the title, and it's pretty good at writing titles because we've given it a swipe file of great titles that Susan provided, and it comes up with better names than it would have otherwise. I know, because I've had ChatGPT name a lot of podcast titles because of the swipe file, and it's using that as the framework to use. It comes up with better titles. And it does a lot of other things in here. I don't want to dive into it, because honestly, you can go to myshowrunner.com and get access to this full custom instructions and just read it, and then you'll kind of see how it works. I don't have any secrets, because this stuff isn't rocket science. I'm literally just telling it to go through step by step. Hey, when prompted with this, ask for the name and the title, then research Bing with that name and title, go and read a few articles about that person, see what you can learn about them, create a summary of it, do this and then do that and then do that. It's not complex stuff. It's just breaking it down into steps in a way that's simple. Like, it's a way you would delegate this to an intern if you expected your intern to be able to do it diligently, right? And these AIs, they don't get tired. They can do this all day. So, like, offload it to them. Make them go through the nitty-gritty work. And now I could just have it watch it, take a sip of coffee, give it a little guidance, and then bam, I have a show breakdown for the episode. That's honestly better than the ones I was writing because I was only spending probably not enough time on it. But this is taking what, if I were to take due diligence and do like an hour to 2 hours on it, it's doing a much better job than I was previously. Name frame. Let's see. Name frame was the first full GPT that I made that comes up with creative names. It takes a fairly straightforward process of creating creative names that I used all the time to create great podcast names for Sweetfish's podcast. So I've had a lot of reps and practice with this method. I had to trim it back a little bit. If it wasn't limited to what the inputs it has, I probably would have done some more. It could have done more here, and I might expand it in the future. It might be able to get better, but there's some limitations with what you can do with the custom GPT for now. So it's using a simpler version of what I usually do, but it still produces fantastic results to come up with like great names for podcasts, apps, businesses, products. Not that it's going to give you the end all be all, but it comes up with some great options. Again, this one works a lot like the other ones. You are an expert naming strategist. So it starts with the broad, you are this. This is what you do. Follow these step-by-step instructions. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. If you look at the instructions, and I'll just open them up here in case you want to like screenshot this and look at them, they're not complicated instructions. They're just detailed as if I was handing this over to an intern. I've actually, like, people have asked me for my process, and I've rewritten this multiple times for other people, and I finally just said, like, you know what, ChatGPT could do this. I'm just going to write it for the bot to execute, and it does a great job. So name frame was the first one I made and was great. ByteBot. Ooh. You know what's funny is this one's probably has some of the most potential, but I guarantee, like, because I'm saying it now, people will catch it. But this one, I feel like I'm struggling to put it into words. I feel like this one like could kill it, could freaking kill it. But even though I'm telling you now, it's going to go over people's heads and they're not going to get how good it is, but a few of you might get it. So I'm going to say it. I'm going to put it out there. But I really feel like AI has a massive potential to help build social following, not because it can even repurpose content, but because it can come up with like fictitious personalities and respond in a certain way with maybe like some snarky remark. Like you can invent whole roast channels that come from a specific personality that you invented. Like you can make Mickey Mouse here or your own version of Mickey Mouse. Not Mickey Mouse, but like you come up with a character and it can be an animal. It can be a robot. It can be some kind of vague enigma of a mystery. You know, it doesn't matter. You can make up some kind of character with some kind of backstory and a personality that responds to social posts in a certain way, and it does nothing but respond to that. And you go and comment as this, running it through this bot. That's what I'm trying to do here. Right now, it's called ByteBot. I'm trying to make this like AI robot that just comes up with funny remarks all the time that I can post alone as a bot. Like I set up whole social accounts for this thing, and respond to people as it or comment as this ByteBot. But it also comes up with its own unique content. I think this has a lot of potential for not just social media, but like coming up with whole channels for this bot. And of course it can be, if you can tie it back to your product or your company, that starts to get really interesting, right? If you're selling toothpaste and you come up with like a toothbrush that's afraid of like bad smelling mouths or something like that, and it's just kind of wacky and weird, like it's gonna work. The cool part is like you can do whatever you want with it. It's like having a personal brand that you have full control over and will never leave your company, and you can just build it up and up and up. So I'm still working on this one. Right now this is early. I'm still experimenting with this, and it's not giving me the consistent funniness that I want. As I'm trying to prompt it and try to get it to do different things. But you can even talk to ChatGPT the normal way and be like, hey, let's create a fictitious bot together or create fictitious character together based on my industry. What would you recommend as a fictitious character? Let's give it a funny personality. What do you think it should do? It can actually generate. That's what my first pass on this was actually GPT the normal GPT just came up with a lot of this, and I kind of tweaked it to try to get it to go in a certain direction. It has some success. Sometimes it writes things that are really funny, and sometimes it's not. I'll save the rest of it for later because this is something I'm actively working about. I don't think the final name is going to be ByteBot either. It's going to be something like Marvin, or I don't know. Still working on it. All right, my last GPT. I know it's been a long list, but I don't know. I love deep dives like this, so hopefully you're still here and listening to this. Is my thumbnail maker. I'm still struggling with this one. I actually have a whole process. I tried to create a GPT that came up with consistent imagery for the podcast, for the AI Micro Skills podcast, and for my client Close Strong, Close Mode. But it's not quite consistent enough yet with DALL-E 3. So now I have a new process that I'm using, a combination of Midjourney and Photoshop, especially leveraging a lot of the AI tools in Photoshop, but that's going to be a future episode on how I'm creating thumbnails for the shows now in a way that leverages and uses AI to speed up everything and make fantastic images. So that's a future episode, but that's it. Those are all my custom GPTs. I mean, you can see it on my screen. I'm not holding anything back. Those are all of them. All of them. Some I've walked in through with detail. Some I've just kind of given a brief overview, but hopefully giving you a little peek into what I've been working on the last month, because I'm only a month into this. Like, I've learned so much in a month. It blows my mind that I wish I would have known this before, but it wasn't even a thing until the end of October. This is brand new. Hardly anybody's doing it. Take a moment to explore, build some, play, fail. A lot of these, like ByteBot's still a failure. My personal brand builder is still in the works. This SEO Article Planner I didn't get off the ground with. My CoPilot still, I'm working on all these, and they're getting better, and they're saving me more and more time, especially the showrunner. My showrunner is saving me the most time right now. Name frame, if I need to come up with names, but that's only once in a while. Showrunner is something I do often. So, yeah, hopefully this has been inspirational to you. Let me know if you have any questions. If so, I could probably make some future episodes just based on your questions. So hit me up on LinkedIn. Come find me. Let me know if this episode was interesting to you, and ask me any questions. I'll make more videos like this one.